Firstly, for reference, I'm female and was 17 years old in this story. Secondly, this is my first post on Reddit. Be kind to me. And lastly, I hope I've posted this in the right subreddit. So about 3 years ago, I went on holiday with my boyfriend and his family. It was lovely. Long hot days on the beach, exploring the cities, swimming in the ocean. But I'm thinking of one particular night. My boyfriend and I hung out with his stepsister most of the holiday. She's a year younger than us and likes getting drunk. Despite the fact she annoyed us by following us all the time, we still hung out with her. So, this one night, she suggests we go and find a club. I state that me nor her are old enough, only my boyfriend can get in. But nonetheless, we are all walking to the other side of the island to get to this club. We're all pretty drunk. I fell over several times along the journey. So, we finally get to this club, only to see all the people leaving it. We didn't realize it was around 2 a.m., and it looked like the club was shut. A bit disappointed, we looked at a McDonald's and suggested that we refuel there. I go inside and order, but tell my boyfriend and his stepsister that I need some air. I go outside for a cigarette. I'm smoking when a black car pulls up into the taxi space on the road. I have the idea that we may as well get a taxi back. I'm hurting from falling down, and I'm very drunk. How much for a ride to my hotel name? I asked him. €10, he replies. Now, the problem was, I only had €5. I said to this man, please, will you drive us for 5? We're from the UK, and we don't know this area very well. So this man says, for you, €5. My boyfriend and his stepsister come out of McDonald's with the food, and they see me talking to this man. I tell them he's a taxi driver and that he's taking us back. The driver is surprised to see them and says he didn't know I was with friends, but to hop in anyway. We are all about to get in the car, me and stepsister in back, boyfriend in front, when the man requests I sit in the front. I had wanted to sit in the front anyway, and me being very drunk and stupid, please forgive my lack of intelligence in this story, I decided to just comply and go in the front, despite my boyfriend's protests. So, for the first part of the journey, everything's good. We're all chatting and laughing together, and the taxi driver is joining in. We have music on the radio, and I am looking out the window at the wonderful oceanside views. Plus, the cool air is nice on my hot, drunken face. We all continue chatting away, and the driver is being friendly, asking us questions about the UK and just generally making conversation. We all start laughing and chatting away again, and he takes my hand and puts it on his right hand on the wheel. Bear in mind this man is probably about 50, very chatty, so I thought nothing of it. He was being friendly. Throughout our conversations, he is holding my hand every now and then. I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable but shrug it off, but it progresses. He placed my hand on his thigh, holding it tight in his hand. I move over on my seat, away from him, but he keeps my hand there. I turn around and see the stepsister, and she mouths, "Are you okay?" I nod, because the man has now let go of my hand. I see the stepsister whisper something to my boyfriend, and they go quiet for a minute. Seeing as he let go, the conversations continued. I can see we are getting closer to our hotel, and I'm wishing for us to be there quickly. The man takes my hand again. This time he places it on my thigh, his hand holding mine tightly. I'm feeling very vulnerable at this point. I'm wearing a short, tight vest dress. I immediately clamp my legs together. I am now silent. I froze. My boyfriend notices and says, "Mate, take your hands off her now." The man laughs and says, "Friendly. I'm being friendly." He continues keeping his hand on my thigh. At this point, my boyfriend and his stepsister are saying, "Stop it, pull over." But he says we are close to the hotel now. I feel sick, the alcohol creeping up in my stomach and throat. The man is still grasping my hand, and he moves it further up my thigh. I'm completely stiff at this point, knowing that if I let my legs relax even in the slightest, things would escalate. but they did anyway. He guided my hand up, and with one of his fingers, he touched me. I don't need to say where, because you already know. I stare out the window, and I'm begging for the car to stop. And luckily, it does. I jump out of the car, and my boyfriend and the stepsister are looking at me. "He touched me," I said. My boyfriend races over to the driver's window, shouting and screaming at him, but the man speeds off very fast, and as he does, my boyfriend kicks his license plate, and we see it dent. We go back into the hotel, and needless to say, I drink more. The next morning, we are going on a boat trip, and my boyfriend's family are asking if I'm okay, after hearing about what happened. I said yes, because it's true. It's over now, but it could have gone a lot worse, and I hope I'll never see him again. We leave the hotel lobby, and that's when I see them. Taxis. White. Yellow taxi signs on top of them. Pulled into taxi ranks. I head over to one. "Excuse me," I said to one of the drivers. "Are all taxis white here?" "Yes," he says. "Taxis here are only white and have the taxi sign on top." I feel my insides churning. So let me reiterate this. A 50-year-old man thought me, a 17-year-old girl, was alone and pretended to be a taxi service to get me in his car. Creepy taxi predator, please, let's not meet again. This happened to me a couple of months ago now, but when it first happened, given how crazy it was, it took me a few weeks to collect myself enough to type it up and post it. It's relevant for me to tell you up front that I'm a military veteran and I have PTSD, anxiety, as well as a pretty bad case of depression that I'm currently in my 3rd year of. I've read that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can massively improve PTSD symptoms and in turn help to reduce anxiety, so I have been trying various techniques at home. The problem is, my wife and I live in a small 2-bedroom, ground floor flat with an upstairs neighbor with absolutely no concept of other people. A jock douchebag type who's a personal trainer, but he trains at home too because gains. The kind of guy whose only 2 topics of conversation are protein powder and steamed rice. I'm sure you can imagine the type. Anyway, with that being a constant issue, meditation and quiet mindfulness are just not possible with the constant noise. My solution to this was to do my normal routine during the day, but take advantage of my insomnia later on. At around 11 p.m/midnight, I would put on my coat and my shoes, and as we live near the beach, I figured I could walk to the beach since there's pretty much no people around, walk on the sand, and be mindful to the sounds of the ocean. Sounds nice, doesn't it? It was the first 2 times, but you know what they say, 3rd time's a charm. The walk to the beach from my home isn't that far, maybe a little over half a mile, but once I got there, I would walk to the very end of the beach, until you reach the cliffs where there's a World War II artillery gun turret, which was another half-mile-ish. Sometimes I would walk the path up the cliff to the gun, and stare out into the blackness of the midnight ocean, which was only broken by the occasional flash of light from the lighthouse. I would sit and listen to the waves crashing against the cliffs. Sometimes I would close my eyes and just concentrate on nothing but that sound. I felt safe there, knowing I was alone. Just me and the ocean. Usually before I turned tail and head home, I would walk down a small row of benches. They're all marked with plaques in remembrance of someone who also came and enjoyed the view, although I imagine they came during the day. The benches are close to an old pub that was shut down years ago, and I had heard the place used to be used as a dogging site, or a brothel or something back in the day. So when I saw a vehicle's headlights coming towards the pub, I figured it was some young lads trying to catch potential doggers at it. I sat on the bench and waited for the car to pass me, but as it rounded a bend in the road further up, I was momentarily lit up by the headlamps. The headlights of the vehicle went off immediately, and the car went off-road and out of sight for a moment. At this point, I was fully alert and a bit cautious, so I dropped to one knee and ducked behind the bench I had been sitting on. The vehicle drove past me, and it was only maybe 40 feet from me, and as the lighthouse illuminated the vehicle, I can now see it was an old beat-up Land Rover kind of vehicle, with shitty camo paint on the wings. At that moment, someone popped out of the top of the vehicle with a scoped rifle and a big torch. In that instant, in my head I was back in Iraq and my senses felt razor sharp. I dropped onto my belt buckle and crawled into a patch of long grass adjacent to the benches. Then I got into a position where I could see them, but they couldn't see me. The guy with the rifle shone his torch at the exact bench I had been sitting on, then the others, searching for me. He started looking all around him through the scope, looking for where I might have gone. My heart was pounding so hard I felt as if they could hear it. I held my sleeve over my mouth to muffle the sound of my breathing, but more importantly, to try and hide the condensation of my breath. The vehicle started to move to get a better view of the benches, so I started slowly crawling towards the main road, as not only was there a row of houses, but an old stone bus stop I could take hard cover in if they saw me and opened fire. After about 5 minutes of hiding in the long grass, it started to rain, and they were still clearly looking for me, but were now about 150 feet away. The guy with the rifle was scanning around with his eye down the scope, so I waited till he was looking away from me to seize my moment and run for cover. I pushed my hands hard into the wet dirt to launch myself onto my feet, and I sprinted towards the bus stop while throwing some zigs and zags in there just in case they had seen me. Luckily they hadn't, and I was now far enough away that I could take out my phone and call the police. They arrived there with a riot van and a squad car in about 10 minutes, and as I was talking to the officers in the van, they spotted the gunner's vehicle and took off after them. The officers in the squad car stayed behind to talk to me. The rain was coming down in sheets by now. They asked me if I was absolutely sure it was a rifle, and I told them yes, it was 100%. No doubt in my mind at all. The officers both looked at each other and then one of them asked, "And what exactly is your experience with firearms?" I told them I was ex-Army, and I've seen my fair share of all kinds of firearms. They then asked me what I was doing there after midnight, which is a pretty fair question to be honest. I explained that quite ironically, I was taking a mindful walk to ease my PTSD symptoms. They were satisfied with that explanation, if not somewhat amused, and told me that the armed response unit was en route. I asked if they needed me to stay behind and make a statement, but the officers told me not to bother waiting around because they most likely wouldn't need to take a statement beyond the call I made, and also, it was pissing down with rain, so I should get home and get dry. It was over, but I still felt super wired, and my heart was still thumping hard in my chest. I started the walk home, and when I was about halfway there, a police helicopter buzzed overhead and settled over the area where I had been sitting on the benches, with a searchlight going. It was right then it hit me like a shotgun to the chest. That happened. That was fucking real. And it was here. What the fuck? My head started swimming. My heart was pounding twice as hard now, and my legs felt like jelly, and my lungs felt glitchy. I couldn't breathe properly. I dropped to my knees, crying in the street in the pouring rain, the only light coming from a nearby street lamp with a flickering bulb. I was gasping for breath, thoughts flashing in my head, thinking that if I had stayed still, if I hadn't hunched behind the bench, if I had done any number of things differently or hadn't, then I could have gurgled my last breath alone in the dark in the cold, wet dirt, and my wife would be none the wiser till the following day. I have no idea if they were even there for me, and if they were, how could they know I'd be there? I'd been twice before, I suppose. It's not like there's animals to hunt there beyond foxes. But why hunt foxes from a vehicle with a rifle and a torch at midnight? Anyway, I'm not ashamed to say that that experience terrified me. I guess my army training helped me stay alert and to stay hidden, but I don't really know. I don't go walking at night anymore, and I have the occasional nightmare about the whole thing. So, that guy with a rifle, let's not meet.